This week on Christian World News.
I will not hesitate to take action against ISIL in Syria as well as Iraq.
An F-16 is not a strategy. And airstrikes alone will not accomplish what we're trying to accomplish.
President Obama pledges to degrade and destroy the ISIS army. Some ask, is it too little too late? Plus, the Ebola virus keeps spreading, putting some 20 nations and millions of people at risk. And in the midst of a shaky ceasefire in Ukraine, citizens trying to restore their everyday lives. We'll show you the ministries giving them the help they need. And welcome to Christian World News. I'm Ephraim Graham. George and Wendy are both on assignment. President Obama has laid out his strategy for defeating the brutal Islamic State group that's been terrorizing Iraq. But some wonder if it's too little too late now that the terrorists have spent years building a safe haven in Syria and have a reported 30,000 fighters.
I will not hesitate to take action against ISIL in Syria as well as Iraq.
President Obama's strategy to degrade and defeat the ISIS terror threat calls for arming and training rebels in Syria, increasing airstrikes in Iraq, and expanding those airstrikes to Syria. It's a plan some presidential supporters call aggressive, but others question if the president's actions are enough. That includes Republican House Speaker John Boehner.
An F-16 is not a strategy. And airstrikes alone will not accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. Somebody's boots have to be on the ground.
Boehner's reaction comes as new CIA intelligence reveals the size and scope of ISIS is more massive than previous reports of just 10,000. It's now estimated the terror organization can muster as many as 20,000 to more than 31,000 fighters across Iraq and Syria. With an enemy that large, the head of the House Intelligence Committee says it could take more than a decade to defeat ISIS. Republican Congressman Peter King told reporters this is not just bombing a mountainside or securing a dam. He says this is a war that could last 10 to 15 years.
We're very busy, as you know, and I'm very grateful you could come.
Meanwhile, Secretary of State John Kerry is on a whirlwind tour of the Middle East, lining up support for a coalition to take on ISIS. But Kerry says the U.S. is not at war with the group. He calls the fight a significant counterterrorism operation.
This is a moment for all decent countries to come together and stand up and say to the world that we've had enough of these individual groups.
President Obama says it is important to protect Christians and other religious minorities in the Middle East. The president and National Security Advisor Susan Rice met with Christian leaders from the region this week. They talked about the pressures Christians face from the rise of militant Islam. The president said the U.S. will work with regional partners to fight ISIS's terrorist threats. The ongoing Syrian war and the rise of the ISIS army in Iraq and Syria have forced hundreds of thousands of Christians to flee. Christians and Yazidis are among the tens of thousands of refugees without water and sanitation in Iraq. But as Gary Lane reports from the city of Erbil, CBN Disaster Relief is among those providing help and hope.
Most refugees here and elsewhere in Kurdistan need better sanitation and health care. In northern Iraq, few toilets are available in makeshift camps. So some people are forced to relieve themselves wherever possible. With few trash bags or refuse containers around, garbage is tossed everywhere. The people also lack clean water. We've already shown you how CBN doubled the number of water containers for 4,000 refugees living in these unfinished buildings in Zakho. And when we learned that some refugee children residing in this church were getting sick, we provided a water filter system to bring them clean water.
One of the necessities to have a filter water for a place like this, because I think they are drinking the water directly from the tanks. Bad water dirty water can cause diarrhea a lot, especially for children, and this is what they are facing.
CBN Disaster Relief has also partnered with Iraqi Christians to bring free medicine and other medical supplies to the refugees. And because they've lost their homes and possessions, some refugees say they're ready to give up. This pharmacist says Christian medical workers are bringing them health care and hope.
We have to deal with them, with their soul, with their needing, with their they are crying. We have to be support them in this. We were encouraging him. The war doesn't end here, because Jesus Christ has a plan for you. He loves you.
And that was the message delivered to more than 100 children attending a Superbook party and showing at an Erbil refugee camp. First, the children enjoyed some face painting and games, a few snacks before the show, and then it was time for Gizmo, Joy, and Chris, CBN's Superbook. One episode taught them about the creation and fall of man, another about David's courage and trust in God to defeat Goliath. A Superbook team volunteer told us the showing was timely because the children are desperate for a little happiness and hope.
Now the Christian children is not happy. He sees all the time the sad.
But on this early September evening, they forgot the terror that forced them from their homes. They clapped, laughed, and were reminded of God's love.
It's so good, and this film, it's so nice watching it to film. Yes, we are happy, and Jesus is with the children all the time.
And like David, these young Iraqi refugees are learning to rely on God to help them overcome the giants in their lives. Gary Lane, CBN News, Erbil, Iraq.
Middle Eastern Christians booed Texas Senator Ted Cruz off the stage after he voiced support for Israel at an event in Washington, D.C. It was sponsored by a group called In Defense of Christians. Cruz was there to talk about Christian solidarity with Israel and standing against terrorist groups like ISIS. But some in the crowd were Palestinian Christian supporters of the Syrian government and even the terrorist group Hezbollah. Our CBN News camera captured what happened next.
Those who hate Israel hate America. My heart weeps that the men and women here will not stand in solidarity with Jews and Christians alike who are persecuted by radicals.
Please respect for dialogue. Respect, please. Okay. We're in America.
If you will not stand with Israel and the Jews, then I will not stand with you. Thank you, and God bless you.
That event was billed as a gathering of Middle Eastern Christian leaders. They were trying to raise awareness about the threat to Arab minorities by Islamic terrorists. And joining us now is Asher Intrater. He's the director of Revive Israel Ministries and the pastor of two congregations, one in Jerusalem and one in Tel Aviv. He's also the author of numerous books about Israel and its role in history. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ev.
First off, why is anti-Semitism so rampant throughout history?
Well, the issue of anti-Semitism is actually a very deep subject spiritually. It has to do with a similar spirit to hating Jesus, because after all, Jesus is Jewish, and the Jewish people are the sons of Abraham. God has a covenant promise to preserve our people, and therefore the very fact of our existence is a proof of the Bible. So the spiritual forces that are against the Bible and against God and even against Jesus want to destroy that. There's a difference between anti-Semitism in the world, say that you might find in Europe or in radical Islam, but there has also been a type of anti-Semitism within the church. And there's different aspects of that. There's one aspect that's even a bit of jealousy. Here we're saying Jesus, the Son of God, we're all to worship him, and yet he's also a Jew on the human side. On the spiritual side, on the other way, there's a hatred against God's covenant. There are promises in the Bible that for Jesus to return and set up his kingdom upon the earth, there must be Jewish people in Israel, in Jerusalem, inviting him to come back. So everything that would be against the return of Jesus is also against the return of the Jewish people to the land and faith in Jesus among the Jewish people there.
Wow, so that begs the question, is that why Israel is under attack right now on so many different fronts?
Well, I do believe there is a spiritual root to all those attacks. If you look today in Israel, surrounding the nation, on the south and west side, you have Hamas, which in Gaza, which is not just Gaza, it's really funded by Iran and Qatar and supported by Turkey. In the north, you have Hezbollah in Lebanon. You have Al-Qaeda forces now coming through Syria to the Israeli border, and the ISIS forces coming out of Iraq toward Jordan, toward Israel. So you see the focus of international Islamic extremism and jihad focused on this nation.
Why is it so important for Christians to stand with Israel and the Jewish people?
Well, I think that goes to a very deep question about what does it mean to be a Christian? To be a Christian, you are believing in Jesus. His Hebrew name is Yeshua. He's the son of David. He is not only the head of the church, he is also the king of Israel. And we believe by the very fact when someone becomes a believer in Jesus, he becomes spiritually part of the greater household of Israel, of the spiritual sons of Abraham, loyalty to David. I don't think that you can actually really be a believer in Jesus without feeling spiritually attached to this nation, because the Messiah is the King, the Christ. He is connected with Israel. And so there is a spiritual link between all Christians and the nation of Israel. One thing that's very interesting that we've noticed over the last years, a historic change in the attitude of the Jewish people within Israel. Instead of looking at Christians around the world as their enemies, for the first time they're saying our only friends in the world are evangelical Christians. They don't even really know what that means as evangelical Christians, but they see the nations of the world and the United Nations and Islamic Jihad turning against them. And our people say, but we have friends. And there's a new union and cooperation between the nation of Israel and evangelical Christians around the world that I think is very biblical and very covenantal, according to as we understand our faith.
Your insight is both an inspiration and reminder for us of who is in control. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Up next, the desperate fight to stop the Ebola virus and the survivor who shares her story of faith.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Inside every child is a hero, a leader, a friend to others, someone who helps out, who does the right thing, who dreams of what they can be, but they still need our help.
What should I do? What should I say? How should I feel?
That's where Superbook comes in. It provides moral and spiritual truths through situations children can relate to, teaching God's Word to the children you love. Join the Superbook DVD Club and receive Superbook's newest episodes as they're available, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25. Get Superbook today and watch the miracles happen.
The Ebola virus could spread exponentially in this coming month. That's the new warning that comes from the World Health Organization. It is asking governments and organizations around the world to ramp up their support. Meanwhile, a 4th American Ebola patient flew home for treatment this week. Heather Sells has the latest.
The Ebola epidemic has already killed more than 2,000 people in West Africa. That makes it the biggest outbreak ever, and it's only the beginning. The World Health Organization is predicting thousands of new cases in the coming weeks. In a report issued Monday, it predicted the outbreak will take 6 to 9 months to contain and may infect up to 20,000 people.
The longer the current outbreak goes on, it's really inevitable that we will continue to see additional spread worldwide.
The Pentagon is sending a 25-bed field hospital to Liberia to help treat health workers who have contracted Ebola. The World Health Organization is asking governments to triple current aid efforts to battle the explosive outbreak. In Nebraska, Ebola patient Dr. Rick Sacra remains in stable condition. Doctors there say they're comparing notes with Emory Hospital in Atlanta, which already treated 2 Americans with Ebola and expects a third today.
It's virtually the same strain, and I've been on the phone to the Emory people every day.
Federal officials say they sent Sacra to Omaha instead of Atlanta to help prepare other isolation units in the U.S. to take more Ebola patients if needed. The virus is now spread to 5 countries in West Africa. Governments are doing everything they can to contain the disease, from imposing nighttime curfews to ordering multi-day countrywide lockdowns. Authorities are most concerned right now about Liberia. It's the worst hit by the virus and suffers from a shortage of doctors. Since the outbreak began, it's lost more than 70 healthcare workers to the deadly virus. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Even as more American missionaries are being treated for Ebola, 2 have been cured and released. Lori Johnson sat down with one of the survivors who's now speaking out about her brush with death.
1 month after American missionary Nancy Wright-Bull was flown out of Liberia, she spoke publicly about her recovery from Ebola.
The question is usually asked, what do you think saved you? Was it the ZMapp drug? Was it the supportive care? Was it the Liberian and our U.S. health, our U.S. medical people? Was it those doctors and nurses that helped to save you? Or was it your faith? And my answer to that question is all of the above.
In a one-on-one interview, Wright-Bull said while she knew the odds were against her survival, she felt the calming presence of God.
Peace that he gives in times of really difficult situations is a peace that we can't even explain. And it's a peace that just is overcoming, and it's a peace that says it's going to be okay, whether I live or whether I die.
And while she's grateful to be alive, she's grieved that back in Liberia, the Ebola outbreak is getting worse. Although Ebola can largely be prevented by keeping your hands clean, many West Africans don't know this and don't even have soap. That's where Operation Blessing comes in. By partnering with churches, they're handing out literature about the importance of hygiene. And they're providing liquid chlorine for disinfecting hands.
The real reason why it's spreading so much is people really haven't been educated enough to know about the dangers, especially in the remote parts of the country.
Operation Blessing is also donating supplies to treat Ebola patients and giving hospitals sterile equipment. So half a world away, Christians are on the ground in West Africa, risking their lives in order to save the lives of others. Lori Johnson, CBN News, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Up next.
The problem is life has come to a standstill. Everything has stopped working. Hospitals, schools, factories, mines, shops.
As Ukrainians pray the ceasefire holds, many struggle to get back to their lives.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
CBNnews.com. News you want, when you want, 24/7. Stay current with up-to-the-minute stories.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, New York.
I don't have to wait for my news anymore. CBNnews.com at your fingertips all day long.
I only watch the stories I want to see.
I find the story, I click on it, and boom, I'm there.
Embassy in Washington, Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News.
The source for your news, CBNnews.com.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
The European Union leveled new sanctions against Russian businesses, rebel leaders, and lawmakers this week. Meanwhile, Ukraine says Russia has removed most of its forces from its country. But months of battle have left behind a war-torn nation. And as George Thomas reports, CBN's Orphans Promise is on the ground helping those struggling to put their lives back together.
Here in the war zone of eastern Ukraine,
the problem is life has come to a standstill. Everything has stopped working. Hospitals, schools, factories, mines, shops.
Buildings riddled with bullet holes. Tanks rolling down highways. Heavily fortified checkpoints. All common sights along Ukraine's border with Russia.
Spend hours hiding in our bomb shelter, then come out for a few minutes, then go back down. What kind of life is this?
A shaky ceasefire between Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian separatists still holds, but people here know that could blow up at any moment.
We don't know when the shooting will start again and things get bad, but that's when we start worrying about our children.
In the Ukrainian provinces of Luhansk and Donetsk, the trauma from months of conflict takes its toll on both young
I'm so sad that I know what war is like.
And old.
God called us to stay and serve. We raised our family here, so we have nowhere else to go.
CBN's Orphans Promise has been on the ground for several months, responding to the desperate needs of people living in the conflict zone.
The risk to our staff is high, but we knew that we had to help.
Kucher says getting supplies as close to the front lines is key.
Those living near cities controlled by pro-Russian separatists are ones suffering most. There's no electricity, no water, no food. They are under constant threat.
Her team makes arrangements with local bakeries to deliver bread to hundreds of families. In addition, they bring sacks of potatoes, clothes, water, and other essential relief items.
Diapers are a big need here. We are so thankful for them. With shops closed, even getting the simplest things as a toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, a laundry detergent are difficult, so this is a huge blessing.
The influx of refugees burdens several small communities already feeling the strain of war.
I'm 77 years old and I see people fighting for bread every day. There are people from other cities displaced by war and they also need help as much as we do.
In communities where electricity works only sporadically, Kucher's team has been handing out Superbook videos.
The Superbook stories teach the children how to overcome harsh circumstances. The children need to hear this message, and so do the adults.
In one town recently recaptured by Ukrainian forces, Orphans Promise helps families rebuild their homes.
For example, a lot of homes have significant roof damage from rockets and other artillery fire. We want to get it fixed before winter comes.
With so much uncertainty and chaos around, residents say these simple acts of kindness will go a long way to eventually rebuilding lives.
I'm so happy that there are people like them in this country that worry about somebody else's pain and are trying to encourage the needy. Praise the Lord for that.
George Thomas, CBN News, in eastern Ukraine.
And now you can get daily stories about the work of the church around the world right on your Facebook page. Simply go to the Christian World News page and click the like button. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Give me that. Bye. Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
We all want to live in the favor and anointing of God. We want His wisdom to solve problems and His provision for all we need. The Bible tells us the Lord has put eternity in our hearts. Each of us wants the certainty of heaven, to know our lives have purpose and that we are playing a vital role in accomplishing His plan for all mankind.
In Pat and Gordon Robertson's latest DVD teaching, Living Under God's Blessing, you'll discover how to receive wisdom to solve today's problems, the keys to provision for meeting all your needs, and how you can be a part of His plan for the world today. Call now to receive Living Under God's Blessing, featuring the 3-time Emmy-nominated series, Made in Israel.
May God bless you, and may you enjoy and live under the blessing of the Lord always.
Living Under God's Blessing, available now.
Finally this week, more than 4,000 people gathered to say a final goodbye to Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A restaurants. Cathy died this week at the age of 93. He was remembered not only for his business legacy, but also for his commitment to biblical principles and his generous heart. A self-made billionaire, Cathy was really committed to WinShape Homes, the foster care facilities he supported that cared for hundreds of children.
I had always heard bad things about foster homes, and I was so scared. When I was being told I was put in a foster home, I moved here. And it was nothing like I'd ever heard. And it may be considered a foster home, but it's not. It's more like a family.
Cathy was a man of faith that is reflected in many of his guiding principles and policies, starting with Chick-fil-A's corporate purpose, which begins to glorify God by being a faithful steward to all that is entrusted to us. He also advised business people to put principles and people ahead of profits and to invite God to be involved in every decision. Following that lead, he chose to close his stores every Sunday to honor God and give his employees a day of rest. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Until next time, goodbye and God bless.